So welcome everyone. So yeah, if you're new here, I talk about the end of spiritual seeking, what that looks like, and just really the simplicity that is at the end of this journey that doesn't need a massive journey actually in order to be realized. All you need to do is to have a human with a brain and a resonance with what I'm saying. Because, you know, a lot of the, especially non-duality and awakening teachings and stuff, the way that it's portrayed is kind of like awakening something that happens, like it's an event. Even though they say it's not an event, the way that it is discussed is kind of like, oh, I hope it happens to me, you know? But what I offer is a direct pointing to the identity-free space that is already here, that you already are. So awakening isn't even about anything needing to happen energetically. It's really about seeing through the delusion of your thoughts, right? Of the thought-based character. Okay. And so I'm going to talk a little bit today about that. I'm going to talk about thoughts and what to do with thoughts. And so just to start off with, the main thing that I really want to hit home, and I'm going to go deeper into it in this talk, but just to start out right from the get-go, is that thoughts are not the problem, okay? It is the relationship to the thoughts that create the illusion, right? Many people ask me, you probably get this question all the time, and at least, you know, a few times a day when I'm doing my calls. They want to know how to manage their thoughts, how to work with their thoughts when they're talking about awakening, okay? What to do. I'm having thoughts, is that okay? What does that mean, right? And so the answer is very, very simple. And so I'm going to get into that today because it really is just very simple. So just to start off with, I'm going to give you some words right now. I'm going to list some words, and I want you to tell me, I want you to think about or reflect on, what do all these words have in common? Okay? Past, future, identity, story, imagination, fears, judgments, projections. And if that's too hard to remember, I have this lovely visual cue here that I wrote in mirror writing. So apologize for the childlike lettering. And then after I wrote it in Sharpie, I realized that I could have just turned it around and gone like that. But anyway, live and learn. It was fun to kind of do some mirror writing. So let's look at all of these. What do all of these have in common? There's two things that these have in common. The first is that these are all expressions of thought. And these are things that are describing something other than now. Okay? Thoughts and other than now. And if you really look at these and you can see a correlation in all of these words, they're actually all the same. Really, you know, the past and the future is a story. The identity is a story. Fear is a projection. The future is a projection. Judgment is a fear, right? Judgment is connected to the identity. Judgment is a story. A story is an imagination. Imagination is fear. Fear is an imagination. Future is imagination. Past is imagination. Story is imagination. Fear is future. Past is future. Sorry, past is fear. Past is even future. So these are all kind of the same thing. You can almost use them interchangeably. And they're all thoughts. And they're all things that represent something that's not actually happening right now. So let's call out thoughts for what they are. And I'm not making them the bad guy, but thoughts are words that are playing in your subjective experience, okay? And words are all made up. Every single word is made up. Every single word is created mentally. And if you define that word, all you will get is just more words, right? And words have their place in the world. They are a tool, right? It's kind of like, I think of words as like a medium to help people, to transport people. And actually in astrology, the planet that rules words and communication and thinking also rules short distance travel, right? So you can think of it kind of like a boat to get across the river. But then when you get across the river, you leave the boat, right? You could look at language like that. It's a tool to help us navigate the reality, but we imagine that there's this real inherent truth to it, right? We experience the interpretation of the words to be the ultimate truth, right? But there is a space that exists just behind the words, right? That is deeper than even the word truth, right? It is the now moment. It is what you are. It is this miracle of life. And not to knock words, not to make words the bad guy, but when we get on a spiritual path, we begin to experience thoughts as obstacles, right? We make them like, oh, the ego. I've got to kill the ego, or I've got to transcend the ego, right? And thoughts, I got to stop my thoughts. And it becomes kind of the thing that always gets beat down, because the mind is a storyteller. It is like the ultimate storyteller. It's where all the stories come from, all the imagination, even the concept mind is not really even real. It's just a creation of thought. But I typically use thought and mind interchangeably. Because words are so fleeting, they're so light, they're so, they're powerful, but when you actually look at what they are, they're very insubstantial as well. Like they're not made of anything other than just a meaning and a concept that happens within one's own subjective experience. And so thought can keep spinning stories and creating tales and interpretations and translations and judgments, all based on how the thoughts had been conditioned beforehand, right? So it's like we receive the thoughts of others from the culture that we grew up in, right? Think how many millions, if not billions, of books have been written over the course of our history, not one book the same. Every book with a different perspective, with a different story, with a different, intention behind it, all just made of words. So there's really no ending to the words. It will just keep spinning and spinning and spinning and looping. And then we get on the spiritual path and the mind starts creating stories about itself, right? In order to awaken, I must have an empty mind. I must be completely silent. I must be like this sage. I must have an awakening experience like this teacher. I must do more yoga, right? Or whatever the concepts are. I need to pray more. I need to be more pure. I need to help people. I need to open my heart and be loving, right? These are just stories and creations of the mind that believes that there's something more to get to than what's already here. Coming back to this: projections, fears, judgments, imagination, identity, story. This is kind of what it all comes back to. And so it uses these things to navigate the spiritual journey, right? And this is very stressful. I actually had a call with someone earlier who was fairly new to non-duality, but he got super in his head about this aware of the awareness practice. I don't know if has anyone done this before? I did this for 10 years, aware of the awareness. And what really happens is that the mind begins to objectify this thing called awareness and tries to find this thing called awareness. It tries to find, but awareness, what it's actually referring to, is not something that you find because it is in fact everything, right? It's like a fish searching for water. It's like you are in the water. Everything is water. This is it, right? But the mind thinks that it needs to gain something. It needs to earn something because it thinks in past and future. It thinks linearly. And so we use this linear model, this linear orientation to words in order to find what doesn't actually need to be found because it's already here. So it objectifies and turns the concept less, the effortlessness of what's already here, into a concept, into something to attain. So it's not about stopping the thoughts. You can't stop the thoughts. Don't even try, because that would just be more thoughts trying to stop thoughts. I get the message I need to have an empty mind. That's a thought. Now that's my belief. Now I'm going to try to enact that with this will that I believe I have, when really it's only just thoughts. So it's not about stopping the thoughts. It is about seeing through the thoughts for what they are, no longer believing the thoughts because they are in fact just made up words. Every single word is made up. There's no inherent truth to it. It's fine that we have it, but they do not contain some ultimate thing, because the ultimate thing, which is really just a concept as well, but is referring to what's here. So you're not going to find it in a word, in a thought, or in no thought, right? Because no thought is still a thought. It's still an arrival. It's still a quality that the false sense of self, which is just thought, identified thought, is searching for. So now instead of searching for positive thoughts or divinity, now it's searching for no thoughts. Or instead of searching for cars and women, now it's searching for enlightenment, no thoughts, eternal bliss. But what's between a thought and no thought? What's between a concept and no concept? It doesn't actually matter, because you are the space that allows for both, right? You are the space that allows for thought. You are the space that allows for no thought, right? There's just this freedom for expression of whatever happens. Because if you really get down to it, there is no one that's choosing the thoughts. They're a program. They just appear, right? And that's the same with emotions. That's the same with actions. That's the same with instincts and impulses of the body. That's the same with desires. I could go on and on and on. There's no little individual somewhere here saying, I like this. I need this. So how do we see through the thoughts, right? How do we stop believing in the thoughts? And this is what I am here to offer in my one-on-one sessions and also on these lives here, is a direct pointing to the source of those thoughts. A direct pointing to what's here that's not a thought. Because if you have a moment where there is no thoughts, do you cease to exist? No, of course not, because there's something that witnesses there's a thought, there is no thought. So just in this very moment, what's here before the next thought? What's here that isn't a thought? What's here that doesn't need a thought to exist? What's here that doesn't need a concept to exist, to be real right now? The thoughts are where the character lives. The thoughts is where the false identity lives. But awakening is not about thought management. It's not about stopping your thoughts. It's about seeing through them. It's about seeing that you're not the thoughts. It's a recognition that you are not the story that's playing out in thought, right? Well, how do I stop believing in my thoughts? Well, you simply just see that they're not you. And you see that there's a space here that exists regardless if you're thinking or not. It's the same thing as saying, how do I stop believing in Santa Claus? Right? Well, you see that Santa Claus isn't real. Isn't real, sorry. Sorry for those who aren't aware yet. You see that it's not real. Okay. You see that the eye is not real, that there's actually nothing behind it, that it was just a mirage. Right? So if thoughts still appear after recognition, that's normal, right? That's natural. We're human beings. We have habits, we have patterns, and that's one of the amazing things about being human is that we're very adaptable, right? Regardless of what you do. I remember when I was in high school, I was on the dance team, and I was also in a dance class. So I was doing lots of dance, lots of hip hop dance. And so we were learning all these different moves, and like I was always dancing. I'd be waiting in line at the grocery store with my mom, and I'd be like going through the moves, like I don't remember them now. Or like even at lunchtime, you kind of be practicing and you kind of like have it in your head. And I see it now in like teenage girls, and I'm like, oh, I remember doing that. So physically, we just adapt to what we're doing a lot. And that's the same with thinking as well. Say you're thinking about math, or you're thinking about spirituality, right? Or you're thinking about your new relationship. Because there's a focus on that energy is going to continue to perpetuate, right? It's just how the body adapts and how we learn is by exposure and focus. So if you spent your entire life focusing on your thoughts and taking them to be you, of course there's some kind of, momentum there, mental momentum that will like continue to perpetuate. So there's nothing wrong with having thoughts. You don't have to believe them though, right? They don't really have an ultimate meaning. Okay? They are just a groove, just a pattern that's been fed a lot of focus. And they appear automatically. There's no one choosing those thoughts. And I use this example a lot. It's kind of like if you have a friend who calls you all the time and you don't answer, well, eventually they're going to stop calling you, right? Eventually that relationship is going to slowly decline. So you don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to believe them, right? You can just simply see that the thoughts are an expression of one of these things, mostly this, also a bit of this, maybe some of this, maybe this, maybe all of these are the exact same thing. Not real, not now, made up words, right? Made up words. But it's okay that the thoughts come back, right? The identity is kind of like glitter. Once you start playing with it, that shit sticks around for a while, right? So but it doesn't mean that you're failing. It doesn't mean that something's wrong. It's just called being a human. It's called patterns that have been worn into grooves over basically your entire lifetime that, have a momentum. Okay. So how can I see that I'm not the thoughts? So I'm going to share like a very simple inquiry um, that will help you to see this. And don't take this on as a practice. It's just something that can help to lessen the charge of thoughts and begin to see through the beliefs. So I'll just invite you to do a short little exercise. If you want to think of a thought, think of a thought. Let a thought come up, you know, a thought that's been on your mind lately. I'm worried about the future. I hope that Christmas with the family goes good. I'm embarrassed about what happened last week, right? Think of a thought like that. Let it come up and just look at it neutrally. And what you can notice is that the thought is for an I. The thought says I. Okay, I'm I hope things go good at Christmas with the family. I'm going to see my family. I hope things go good. I hope things go good. So if you look just in your most direct experience right now, where is the I that hopes things go good? Or where is the I that is choosing that thought? Because there's a thought that comes up that says, I, da 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 da. So we just assume, oh, I. It says I'm I. It must be me. But where is the me in this moment that's choosing that thought? Because there's a body here, there are sensations here, there's thoughts here, there's seeing, there's hearing. There's an experience. But where is the I? Because what you will find is that that's just an empty thought. There's not actually something that is behind that thought. And a lot of the times it's like that with fear as well. There's nothing behind the fear. There's just a thought. And then when you look behind the thought, there's nothing there. It's an illusion. It's a false reality. It's a trance made of language that we're all lost in. And so this is what spiritual awakening is really is seeing through this mirage of language and realizing how the conditioning of your culture and your family and the environment that you grew up in and all of their thoughts and all of their conditioning dating back way, way back is what you're referring to as I. But they are just conditioned thought programs. It's wild when you start to see this, when you start to really see this, that there's no actual thinker. There's just an emptiness that's behind that. And this isn't something that you learn with information. This isn't something that you learn through studying. This is just a clear, direct pointing. An observation about the only thing that's actually happening right now, which is just this moment. So any thoughts about a future moment are still just happening in this moment. They're not real. Only now is real. And even take away the word real, that's just made up too. That's just a made up thought as well. There's just this. And even take away just this. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whatever word you label and you translate over it. There's just this. It doesn't change anything. It's like if someone's speaking Russian and you have an English translator and they're translating a completely wrong message. It doesn't change the message of the original Russian speaker. It just creates a false translation and an illusion. So words completely overstep their limitation because they try to, especially in the spiritual path, because they spin stories and imaginary tales and identity constructs about something that doesn't need to be found, about something that is so obviously just what's here, right? And it kind of gives this impression like that you need to control your inner world, that you need to stop the thoughts. Having your thoughts slowing down and the mind like beginning to, yeah, slow down is a byproduct, is a symptom of this direct pointing that I'm sharing right now. But what we do in spirituality is we approach it backwards. So we hear, oh, people that are enlightened, they're equanimous. They have no thoughts, right? Okay, well, that means I'm going to be equanimous and I'm going to have no thoughts. But that's the spiritual ego. You're just faking it, right? You're changing your personality. And I'm not saying there's no value in that, but you're just kind of changing your personality to be more spiritual when the root of the problem is that you weren't your personality to begin with. It's not about crafting a new identity. The softness, the naturalness, the spontaneity, the quiet mind and the peace is what emerges when you realize that you're not the identity. That this stuff is not actually what you are. That these are stories, that these are made up concepts, right? And so it's not about becoming something more than you already are. Even take away the word awakening. I use that word, but I don't really like it because it creates a false idea about it, but I still say it so people know what I'm talking about. But really, it's a sobering up. Really, it's just a softening into the naturalness of however you want to respond in the moment, of however feels right. No projections needed, no stories needed. You can have stories as well, though. That's fine too. If someone says, oh, the mind got identified, I got identified, I started ruminating on my thoughts. I messed up. Now I'm not awakened. Awakening needs to look like this. I need to have no thoughts. I need to be equanimous. I need to be loving all the time. I need to be, my heart needs to be opened. That can happen, but you also are the freedom for the opposite of that too, right? This isn't a belief that I'm sharing with you. This is just pointing out the most obvious, self-evident thing that is happening right now. So it's not about stopping the thoughts. Don't even try. That's just going to keep you seeking. It's just going to perpetuate more thoughts because now you're identified with the one who tries to stop the thoughts. And now those thoughts are going to be taking over. What are you without the I right now? What are you without the me? Any mental position that your mind wants to take. I'm the witness. I'm the awareness. I am the great I am. It's just, it misses the point. What are you without awareness right now? What are you without that label? What are you without your memories? You don't need to fix the story in order to wake up from it. You don't need the thoughts to look a certain way in order to realize that you are not the thoughts. You don't need to create a new story. You don't need to do anything because you're already it. Just stop or don't stop. And sometimes it can feel like the mind just needs to exhaust itself because spiritual seeking can be an addiction, honestly. I'm speaking to more and more people these days in my one on one private calls that are telling me wild things about the lengths that their mind has taken them to in order to discover the truth. And, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but it sounds like an addiction to me. Spending hours and hours a day listening to content, reading books, investing thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands even of dollars over decades seeking, going to retreats, bothering all their friends and family by their non-dual beliefs. No, I'm right. No, there's only oneness. This is the truth. There's only oneness. There's no one here. This is my spiritual belief. Misses the point, right? Misses the point. What are you without your story right now?